Hello and welcome to the Guru Is You podcast. I'm your host, Laura Wall. This podcast is all about people who found unconventional methods to heal themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Their stories contain a little bit of mystery, maybe some magic, and even miracles. And they're here to inspire you to remember you are more than your body. You are more than your mind. You are the guru, and the guru is you. Today's guest is not only a beautifully expressive dancer, a personal trainer, and a yoga instructor who's worked with Olympic athletes, but she's also the founder of The Life School. Let's welcome Jen Ramos. So Jen, I understand that you've been through something really intense in your past that you have come back from. And I'd like to hear that moment where you kind of realized this pain is unbearable and something has to change. What was that for you?
It was when I found out my abuelito, my grandfather, passed away. And it was 2019. No, 2020. No, 2019. There we go. It was 2020. October, the day of the Dead.
Wow.
Yeah, it was Day of the Dead. He passed away, and he was fixing an air conditioner and fell backwards, and the air conditioner fell on him. So he was in really bad health for several months, and he just kind of declined. And it was interesting when he started to decline, and I started to hear from my family that this was happening because my mom decided to tell me for the first time that he was my abuser, that pre-verbal Jen, when I was 2 or 3 years old, he had sexually abused me, and it was just through by chance, that my mom found out, and it was just kind of a hush-hush thing. And they didn't want to tell me until I was in a good place. And I had always been in a good place, and this is, years and years after my yoga practice. But looking back, I was able to see the synchronicities of why I was doing what I was doing, without planning to. I knew there was a need for healing. I didn't know what. I didn't feel. I just knew. I knew. It's knowing without knowing. And this is trauma that has affected my relationships in my family, my relationships with my significant others, my choice in men, self-abuse patterns that I had towards myself, this impostor syndrome that I had built for myself. And years, it was just kind of snowballed of a search of so many different healing modalities to that point to discover why I was doing what I was doing. And it was through, it was that point. So he passed away on Day of the Dead, the day before Day of the Dead. And it was something physical that I felt. And when you say something physical, I don't know if you've ever experienced like, oh, I'm thinking of someone, huh? I wonder if I'll ever, or, you think of a memory with a friend or a family member and then they call. It's that kind of synchronicity. Or, oh, this place would be good to visit. And then it pops up on your search engine, or not that, because it might be cookies, but so many different ways that we overlook our ancestral intelligences, the intelligences that we're built in with, like intuition, like empathy, like
So did you have like a knowing right before his death, that like kind of what you're saying, where you thought about something and then the phone rings? Did you have a little knowing right before his death? Or are you saying that as of his death, you had like a visceral or a body type reaction?
both, both. So a little bit before that time, I had I had been out of a relationship for a couple years, and we'll get into that story too. It was a very abusive relationship that I had stayed in for 10 years, and then decided finally to get out of that, and for the first time think for myself and decorate for myself and dress how I liked and explore my own body, my own mind, my own self, my own sense of knowing what my essence was. And until I really dedicated that kind of love to myself, it's as if the universe started saying, yes, she's ready. Here's the key. You're ready for this piece of knowledge. Here's the key. And I understand why I got into dance, why I got into, or why communication was so difficult for me, why singing had become such a pivotal thing in my life, because the person who I had, or my family had trusted, took my voice away. So my voice was taken away at a very, very young age. And what that led me to do is express myself in different ways through dance. That was what my expression was, how I spoke. And then little by little, I started understanding how to connect the mind when I started getting into yoga, what that meant for the connection of the mind and the body. Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting connection point that I'm hearing is this happened before the development of your own speech. So you were at such a young age, 2, 3, or even before that. And is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you were just at the verge of literally finding your voice and learning language. And yet, because of this incidence, it stopped you from using that channel of self-expression. And instead, the body and the mind had to find other methods. So you became this little dancing kiddo is what I'm hearing. So
Absolutely.
that's kind of what I'd like to go back to, is like the beginning of the story. Like, where throughout your youth did you start to see that there was something missing, like that you kind of knew that healing was going to need to be done? Like, how did you see the problem, so to speak,
Oh, goodness. I think I had.
Or were you just having fun dancing?
I was a shy kid, and I think that at that had to do with it until middle school. So my memory of this incident happened when it's kind of when you try to remember the furthest back. I remember having really bad nightmares and waking up screaming and crying, and my mom would hold me and she would just pray with me, and she would pray with me and pray with me and pray with me. And she said, one of the times she finally said a prayer, and she asked for help for me and to give me comfort the next day, and this is what I found out years later, the next day my uncle had gone to my house and said that I had an older cousin, she was 7, that she spoke up. And that because she spoke up, they were able to make the connection and take me to the doctor and to take me to the psychologist. And when they said, does he touch you in a certain way, instead of, they give you the bear, instead of pointing at the bear, I had pointed to myself. And so I remember.
I want to stop you right there, because to me that's pretty revolutionary. Because from what I understand about trauma is there is a splitting of the self and there's a distancing, and they do that so they're not triggering you, that they're giving you an object so you can distance yourself from the pain. And yet you at what age pointed to yourself? How old were you?
3.
So at 3, there was still that sense of ownership of that this is my body, that belongs to me, and yet someone has done something that I didn't give permission for.
Yeah, it was. Thank you for saying that. It helped, and part of owning and loving every part of me and giving that forgiveness for my grandpa, for his, trauma or whatever he had experienced that he passed on. That part of forgiveness and ownership was freedom for me. And so the year after that, I was 4. My mom enrolled me in dance. And that's when I started my creative expression. When I was 5, started ballet and kept going. And not till middle school, Mr. B at Desert View Middle School. I grew up in El Paso, Texas. At Desert View Middle School, we had a dance and theater program called Top Hats and Class Act. Top Hats was the dance, Class Act was the acting. And he was a pivotal figure in my life to change what I thought of men. Him and my other grandpa, of course, my mom's dad, I still had these men in my life who encouraged me to speak up, who got mad if I didn't communicate, who really nurtured me in that sense that I needed. Yeah. So from then, middle school, one of the highlights of my life, where I did everything from, in middle school, we would do everything from swing to ballroom to tango to partner dance. It was all partner dance. It was half boys and half girls. We were competing everywhere. And the highlight of my life, when I was 15 years old, I competed in a Hips Don't Lie contest. Shakira went to El Paso, and so I competed in the contest, and I won the contest. It was a citywide contest, and so they gave me a pink Razor phone. I don't know if you remember those.
Was it a flip phone?
It was a flip phone.
Okay. There's probably some people out there, Jen, I'm just going to pause for a moment, and maybe they're not familiar with all of the history that you and I are. So before phones were just a flat screen, they were phones that folded, and there was a flip phone. And then also, for those who are maybe a younger generation, Shakira is the girl that was with J-Lo on the last Super Bowl,
Yes.
who was awesome.
Yes. Yes.
And they're just listeners, so we need to make sure we give them some reference points, some little trail of breadcrumbs to follow us.
Yeah, that was the highlight of my life. She pulled me on stage. I got to dance, and front row tickets. I went with my mom. And so these were the highlights in my life, that I had the high of highs. And then on the opposite spectrum were my relationships. So in high school, of course, we all have our boyfriend that is piece of work. So
this is a grown-up show, so you can use all words to express yourself. Use your voice. Profanity is welcome.
thank you. I actually send him loving kindness. I have been doing this for people who we consider our enemies, especially because of Lent. Sending love to the people who shaped who we are, because we have to be with somebody who, kind of brings us down to realize what we really want. And I started just being in relationships that were so abusive and so oh gosh, I don't even know how to, physically abusive. And I think that did, parallel my sexuality as I'm starting to explore. It's not understanding myself and understanding that something was wrong, but not understanding why, and having men in my life that were contributing to, I guess, me thinking that I'm messed up, or me thinking that something's wrong with me.
So when you had those incidents of someone not being a class act, we'll say, a relationship partner that was physically abusive, was there something going on at a conscious level in your mind that said that you could not speak and say that was wrong? Or like, was there anything that was like literally holding you back from saying, no, stop?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think since that point, I had slowly started to understand what boundaries were and how to speak up for myself. And just since the past couple of years, have I really embodied what that means to stand true to my own being, of my own wants, my own needs. So, and that's kind of the journey.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I see the highest high, Shakira, and the pink razor phone. I definitely have had my own share of jerky boyfriends with boundary issues. Was there anything else that you experienced in terms of health issues, or maybe even your mindset, that you started to see a pattern where you recognize that that's not the way you wanted to live, like to kind of lead you towards this healing path?
Oh, wow. I think it just spiraled down deeper. Yeah, but it was that I had to go so deep in my shadow self. So from high school, at the end of high school, I was in another relationship for 10 years that was abusive in a different way. When I graduated high school, I had, I guess the reason I suffer from imposter syndrome was because I have this compensating factor of all these achievements. So in high school, I competed with the group Destination Imagination. They're an improvisational acting group, and we went to one state, went to globals, ended up getting third in globals, graduated top 10% of my class. I was competing in track and field as an underclassman, which at the time, my ex-boyfriend, he joined track, even though he wasn't a runner. It was kind of hilarious. He joined track to watch me and to make sure I wasn't talking to anyone, and to just suppress me. And so my sophomore year, I also joined, I ran this, there was a Miss Most Beautiful contest at our high school. And I ended up winning best costume, audience favorite, and most beautiful. So I had these parallels of these highs in my life, but I was still feeling so empty and something was missing in a way. And so when I graduated high school, I left to California and I lived in Santa Monica. I decided to become a professional dancer. I didn't know if I wanted to sing, I didn't know if I wanted to do Broadway or do commercial dance. Ideally, to be a background dancer for Justin Timberlake. You can tell how old I am now.
JT in the house.
JT in the house. Sorry. I wanted to be a background dancer for him or for Beyonce. And so I started studying dance at Santa Monica College. So we would have ballet, and we would have all types of dance, but I was a live-in nanny at the time. So I was living with a family in California, and I had this little teeny tiny studio in this mansion on the beach, and would wake up, run on the beach, come home, cook the kids breakfast, get them ready for school, get myself ready for school, bike to school, have a full day of repertoire and then normal GE classes, general education classes, and then come home, cook them dinner, do all homework, shower, all the things for the kids, and then go to rehearsals back at school. But before, and it was exhausting. So all the mothers out there, represent. I have so much respect for you. I would run on the beach in the morning and I saw this group of people doing yoga, and it's like, wow, that looks calming. They're practicing right in front of the ocean and just run along. And finally the teacher said, come do yoga. And I said, okay, cool. And so I started practicing. And a lot of it was because I would hold my breath when I was in ballet or when I was in modern class or in rehearsals. I just realized that I would hold my breath and sometimes even faint. And of course, I think that's, the first, before anything, it's intrinsic. The breath is so important. And
I want to stop you there for a moment because I'm hearing again that connection. So, like a lot of us who have dealt with poor boundaries and just humans in general, I hear imposter syndrome. And I used to think it was a thing, kind of like perfectionism, but I come to realize it really affects almost all of us at some point in our life. Even if we have this beautiful, shiny outside, like you're saying, you were the first in this and you're running here and you got this trophy and you got a pink phone. And to most people, they thought she's living the life. But still, there was the flip side of you, which was your relationship side that you're saying you knew was out of alignment. And so it felt like you were not real because you're kind of like, well, they see this, but they don't see this. And so I'm hearing that maybe that's what was part of what you were feeling about the imposter syndrome, because most people are saying, but she is doing all the things.
Oh, absolutely. It's the duality. And
yes.
I'll talk a little bit about the shifts in my life, especially studying astronomy, astrology, all these tools we use to know ourselves more. I'm a Gemini, born 6/6, June 6th.
Again, the duality.
The duality is, it's strong. I was, again, just working so hard at my own craft, but I was in this long distance relationship with my ex at the time, who was living in El Paso, then he lived in Midland, then he lived in San Angelo. And so, or San Angelo. And so I'm here living my life, and I'm listening to him saying, like, you need to be here. I can't do this. I need you to be with me. There's people running on the beach. What if a guy hits on you? What are you going to do? And at the time, I was so faithful. I was so dedicated. When did I have time to do anything? Because when I wasn't taking care of the kids, doing that, nannying, I was babysitting on the weekends, walking dogs, house sitting. I was going to my own auditions. So I was auditioning for all of these, parts for traveling, for touring companies, for Disney, for everything. And the part that I would get, tell me.
I want you to pause. Yeah, I want you to pause for a moment because I want all of us, especially the listeners, let's just all take a deep breath together. Okay. I don't know about you, listeners, but that makes me tired. I'm thinking about all this amazing energy that Jen has. She's just this bright, shiny light, and she's just bebopping around and doing all these things and then taking care of a family on top of it. And I can only imagine how internally there must have been some exhaustion there. And so I'm curious about how the yoga led to maybe the healing, because I know that you have particular methods that you have told me about that have helped you heal from this trauma and heal from these bad relationships.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's quite synchronicitous that the thing that you noticed was stopping of your own breath, stopping of your own voice, holding your breath, basically stopping your life force became, it was like at a subconscious level that there was something that drew you to yoga, like you knew you needed this. So please tell me more about the healing methods.
Oh, absolutely. So I auditioned for a vocal scholarship and got a vocal scholarship to ASU, Angelo State University. And so I decided to leave California and live in San Angelo, Texas, in the central Texas, and start studying there. And so that's where my breath started. I didn't know anyone, so they had fitness classes at the gym. And when I saw yoga class, I was like, oh, that's awesome. And so I went into the CHP, Center of Human Performance, and went to this yoga class, and the teacher didn't show up. And so we're waiting. The front desk attendant came in and was like, oh my gosh, we don't have anyone. They'll be there in 15 minutes. And so I said, okay. And so I looked around, and it was just a small group, maybe 8 or 9. And I said, hey guys, do you want me to just show you some yoga? I know a little bit. They're like, yeah, sure. And so I'm
going to pause you right there because me and the rest of the listeners, we already knew that was going to happen. We knew you were going to stand up and do that. You just can't help yourself because that's who you are.
I was like, we might as well do something together. And that's where it started. So I started teaching. And let me tell you, I didn't know a lot of the poses. I would make them up, and I'd say, this is arrow pose. And it was just something that I was like, oh, this looks like a frog. I think this is frog pose, or this is this pose. I would totally make it up. But I was having fun, and I started eventually saying, okay, I can't be teaching people yoga the wrong way.
I want to go to that class. I want to go to the class where the poses are made up names, because that makes it more fun.
And I would tell them, I was like, I think this is called this, but it looks like an arrow, so let's call it arrow pose. Or I knew nothing about yoga, but a little bit about the breath, a little bit about more about the physical activity behind it, because I was a dancer. I was studying exercise science at ASU, kinesiology. I knew dance anatomy. And so that's kind of when my studies of the body, exercise physiology, started. I was really interested in how the body worked and how my body worked, and if it was working correctly. I was feeling like it was working correctly from the outside. And then studying communications. So my undergrad was in kinesiology, communications, and music. So
okay, I'm going to pause you right there. So you are a sexual trauma. I don't like the word survivor. I just think you're victorious. So you had something terrible done to your body. It stifled your voice, and the two things that you were pursuing were body related and voice related.
Yes. Body related and voice related, and both of them are held together by breath. And so this is the unconscious, intrinsic, the intuitive force that I didn't really understand I was going through, but knew, just listened to those guiding forces. And so I finished my undergrad, and between my undergrad and grad studies, I knew I wanted to learn more about breath work and learn more about what was going on. And so I went to India. I left India and I lived in India for a little bit in an ashram and studied and lived and breathed. And they taught me about releasing and letting go and what engrams were, which are these, these are the impressions that we take with us. Say, for example, you're giggling in class and your teacher says, "Don't laugh." And you hold that back. Well, that leaves an impression on you. We are storehouses of information in our body and mind that we carry around with us, largely unconsciously. And I had my first real release, real connection to my divine essence, the creator, the creation, something that I was pulled out of the cosmos and drove around the universe for a while and came back and was like, whoa, what was in there? What was inside of this shell that I didn't understand? And so a lot of that was my training for yoga, was understanding subtle bodies. And that's where the healing was understanding the subtle bodies of ourselves, the inner intuitive forces, the ancestral DNA that we are left with, these impressions that our ancestors passed on, and so many generations have been passed on. And I don't know about you, I just did my 23andMe.
Oh.
And I'm just so interested. And so, your sixth grandparent was from Africa, or for northern Ghana, from Iberia, from this, Native American, Spanish. And so I realized that we have these inner intelligences that are in our DNA. Means whatever they survived, they passed on, and they left us with this information. And it's intuition, it's empathy, it's connection, it's our God source. It's something so divine that it has no name, but it surpasses what science can explain. God is the precursor to science. Science just puts names to what existed already. So this is what I was understanding, was getting so deep into the science, deep into the study of how we work and the forces unseen, which is the energy, and how we work with our energy and how we unlock these channels that either were taken away from us involuntarily or involuntarily, or we were left with, passed by or conditioned to by our parents. And so, and not to mention, it was hard for me too, growing up another knowledge bomb. I'm giving all to you. And so my dad, my parents were together, and then my dad worked as a border patrol agent. He was involved in, at that time it was the cartel that was rising, and they were threatening and involved with something, and he ended up going to prison because of someone else, and left me without a father for 7 years of my life. And then my mom got remarried, and then had my stepdad, and then my little brother. My stepdad, who introduced me to the Lutheran church, and of course we grew up Catholic on my mom's side of the family. And so being involved in the youth group I was so involved with it. And you have these epiphanies as a kid and don't really understand why, and you just know this beautiful force is unseen, and you trust in this unseen and just have faith in it. And so when I was little, I went to New Orleans to do voluntary cleanup after Katrina. And so I remember coming here after the hurricane, and it was just horrible, and helping the kids and teaching vacation Bible school, teaching them dancing, and seeing the hope in people who are also suffering, and who have also suffered, and who also didn't have both parents, or who also had some dark things, or saw their family pass away in such a tragedy. And it was really important for me. And after Katrina, we went to Panama Beach and had a youth group seminar there, and it's on fire for God. And after years later, now I'm going to bring you to present time, understanding what synchronicity is, meeting the love of my life, and deciding to leave Austin, which I'll tell you about how I got to Austin. Meeting the love of my life. Where I live now happens to be a block away from the church I stayed at, that I helped at when I had come for Katrina cleanup. And you can't plan that. You cannot plan that. These are synchronicities that are gifts for paying attention, living life on purpose, and then understanding why later, why I was doing what I was doing later. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's amazing. So I'm kind of hearing like a little bit of the start of your healing with yoga, and then I'm hearing more of the Jen now, who's in a much better place. Were there some other tools that you used in there to help heal yourself through this process?
Oh,
that you might want to share about?
Absolutely. Oh, wow. I mentioned a little bit about astrology. I went into the study of the stars and the universe. So after I came back from India, I was living in San Angelo. I had finished my master's degree, and I was studying in California. I wanted to be a professional dancer. And then here I am in San Angelo, Texas. They don't have a dance company or anything dance related. Well, actually, San Angelo Ballet is amazing. When it was on Chadbourne, it was Megan who was there. Wow, she was creating little powerhouses. So I was studying ballet there too, but to dance professional, They didn't have that in San Angelo. So I was studying to get my Master in Education, Master of Education in Coaching, Sport, Fitness, and Recreation Administration. I knew...
That sounds very official.
Sounds very official.
It sounds very official and healing. So I'm curious to see where this goes.
All it means is you know how to set up a program that, fitness or recreation is to have fun. And so that was my specialties: fitness classes, yoga classes, and secretly setting up my own. I knew eventually down the road, after my performance career, I wanted to open up a wellness studio or a wellness center, mine, to help people connect their mind, body, and spirit. And so that was my long term. I said, okay, I'll sacrifice. Again, I'm doing all of this. I was working as a professor, an adjunct professor at Angelo State University, teaching some of the kinesiology courses, some of the physical activity courses, teaching the yoga philosophy courses, paralleling my own personal life. I was in a very abusive relationship where my ex at the time was addicted to coke, addicted to cocaine. In case you guys knew that, he was addicted to cocaine. He was an alcoholic. I was going to Al-Anon, which is for the family members of the alcoholics. He just had so many addictions, and I felt that, you have that savior. You want to be that savior. Here I am studying how to be as healthy as you can in a relationship with someone who was in such a dark place. And
again, a huge contrast.
Oh, absolutely. Trying to live that, it was a lie. It was a lie to myself. Here I am teaching people how to do this, and I was eating healthy. I was making all the steps in my own personal life, that the person that I had loved so much couldn't join me in that path. So I continued studying deep in my studies about subtle bodies, about astrology. And so this is a little bit about astrology: North Node and South Node. Your North Node, and I do think that...
I'm going to pause you for a moment in case we have people that are brand new to astrology. So what Jen's referring to is, if you speak to an astrologer, and for those that don't know about astrology, if you think it's kind of cuckoo, it actually was a science that was taught to priests for kings and queens. And it's very complex. It's very complicated. There's a lot of math. There's a lot of science. It's not just the esoteric. And when you have an astrologer read your natal chart, your birth chart, what you're giving them is the information of when you came into this world, the time, the date, the location. They're looking at where you are on this planet. And then in relation to the other planets, they're getting a 3D picture of where you are literally in the universe. And then based off of that, there are two positions. One's called the North Node and the South Node. And then I'm going to hand it back to you, Jan, to continue.
Yes. Thank you. And it's so funny when I tell people I study astrology. It's like, oh, I don't believe in that stuff. Well, Stonehenge was a way to read the lunar cycles, to read the cycles, to navigate the seas, to figure out the seasons. And we are such cyclical beings. And in nature, we have our lunar cycles, we have our birthdays. If we believe in a birthday, it's the one cycle we do most. I'm making an assumption here, and you know what that means when I make an assumption. I make an ass out of you. Okay, I'll stop. But yeah, It's
So the study of astrology has been healing for you
it
with this trauma
has
in what way?
it helped me understand what a North Star means, how to follow your North Star. These biblical references that were also left for us to understand. And I'll get a little more into it. So as I'm studying what the duality of my own nature is, what the duality of my partner is, what my north node, where I'm supposed to go, what my life purpose is, and what my south node is, which is my comfort zone, where maybe it was my habits, um, understanding that the relationships had, and the ruler of that house. Oh my goodness, I'm going to start going into an astrology talk. That will be another. That'll be another one. And
We'll have to come back for another episode.
absolutely, absolutely. Knowing your life purpose is so essential to find direction in healing for your life, to understand what your energy tends to do, where your comfort zone is, what um, or what is your area of growth, what will make you prosper, what will naturally you'll start manifesting by going taking the path of I'm sorry, not taking the path of least resistance. So by going towards your North Star, by finding your life purpose, doing the hard work that you know is hard, cutting off the relationship that you know doesn't feed you, that's where you find healing.
Mm. I think, like I said, I'm not trained in trauma per se. I'm familiar with some stories that are extremely traumatic, and so I'm seeing that for someone that was a young child, like you were at a very formative time. 2 to 3 years old is the identity of self in terms of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And, for some people that may be listening that have experienced some sort of sexual trauma, maybe in their teens or in their 20s, they may not see that astrology could be healing for them.
Right.
But what I'm hearing from you is part of what you lost was identity or confusion around your identity. And that astrology actually kind of helped you reorient. So you had something to focus on. You had some clues about how life would work for you. And that helped you move forward. But of course, I'm sure there was some other things that slowly come out that are more painful that you've had to work through.
Okay.
Have you used any other methods or other non-traditional things to help you facilitate your own healing?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So, um, mindfulness, mindfulness practices, meditation. Meditation is a big one. Without my meditation practice, without ritual, without prayer, without taking the initiative to understand my multiplicities, I would have never, um, and it just takes you saying, hey, this isn't right. I'm going to do something for myself that helps me know myself a little bit better. Maybe when I get mad, this is what triggers me. And so, so I got out of the relationship, moved away from San Angelo. I got an offer to teach. Auburn University has a partnership with the National Olympic Committee, and a friend of a friend suggested me, and they called me over and said, hey, we would love for you to teach some yoga therapy, to teach some mindfulness. And I decided to leave everything I knew in San Angelo and
It seems to be a recurrent theme for you.
yes, to leave, to pick up and leave. And of course the non-attachment that's a part of the mindfulness practice is the non-attachment that I was learning. So I came back with this letting go, letting go, letting go, letting go. When I went to study in India, this recurring theme of letting go, and I knew I had some sort of a holding, but I didn't know where, I didn't know what. I just knew it was a little wrong. I knew I couldn't find the guy of my dreams. I knew I was healthy, but I didn't know what I wanted to change my life. But anyways, I trusted, tapped into intuition and trusted.
And at that time when you were in the ashram, on the timeline, for those who've been listening to the whole episode, so at that time you had no idea that your abuser was your grandfather.
Right.
Is that correct?
I had no idea.
And so
Yes.
again, you didn't even know the source of this underlying issue, and yet you were following this guidance and slowly revealing things about yourself. And I find it interesting you using the phrase of letting go, because part of what I understand with that process with someone that has abused you is there's a forgiveness piece eventually, hopefully.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that part of that forgiveness piece, every time I've ever done forgiveness, it's not like one and done, right? It's like, I let you go. I forgive you again. And I forgive you again. And I forgive you again. And I forgive myself again. And so I'm hearing that at a very deep level, you were guided to learn these things, even though you didn't know who you were letting go of in a way, or what situation you were letting go of from the past.
Right. Here I am, I'm thinking, oh, letting go my ex-boyfriend, oh, letting go of that relationship, oh, letting go of, the couch we shared together or the stuff in the apartment we bought together, letting go, letting go, letting go. And in a way, again, understanding these subtle bodies, I was traveling through the koshas, traveling through these layers of myself deeper and deeper and deeper, because you had that disassociation that started from the core of myself, my womb, my woman,
your sacral chakra. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I can't just dive in. And you can dive in, but for example, when I went to India, I was able to when I went to India, I was able to go straight there because I didn't have my comfort. I had to face it. But then you go back to your routine and you go back to the relationship and you fall into these habits and you understand that you have to keep on watering your plant. This is the seed that you can't just expect for your flower to blossom. You have to water it. You have to pluck, the bugs that are there. You have to clean it. You have to make sure there's enough sunlight. You have to make sure there's enough water, good food. Healthy food is so important. And so I had gone to Auburn and was in Auburn for a little while, and one of the wives of the athletes, one of the Olympic athletes, she ran the Soul Cycle in Washington, D.C., and she said, hey, I want to open up my own business. Would you like to go into business with me and my husband? We're going to open up a cycling studio, and you can do yoga, and we would be the only hot yoga studio in this area in Auburn. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And so we opened up the studio, and we had athletes from the Atlanta Falcons. We had athletes from Auburn University. We had it was just a great it was a great time, but I knew something was off. But I kept my yoga practice, and on my birthday, I prayed and I said, if I'm on the right track, let me know. And that day I went to the studio, and the studio was locked, and my business partners were there, and they said, hey, our landlord just switched the locks on us. I said, what's going on? I said, well, we didn't pay rent because the air conditioner was out. And it got so dangerous because it was summertime. It was getting so dangerous we had to call the ambulance a couple times for heat exhaustion. Or for hot.
In the deep south. Yes.
Yes.
This is hot and humid.
This is
in a
hot,
closed room.
hot and humid in a closed room. And for yoga, that's okay. But for cycling, it gets a little extreme. And so it was this whole thing, this whole lawsuit. And so later, when we found out the landlord's son was his lawyer. And he accidentally forwarded us a message that said, let's teach these kids a lesson. Ha ha. And it turns out he was trying to clear out the shopping center that our business was located in order to sell the property to Whole Foods so that he could have a contract for several $1 million because he sold the corner property to Walgreens and saw how much money it was. And so my business partners were both lawyers that had gone to law school and were like, hey, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. I had to go back to El Paso for my little brother's graduation. He was graduating high school. I said, okay. So I took my suitcase and left, my stuff in Auburn. And didn't know what I was doing. I held a yoga event. That was when the detainees were happening and all the kids were in the camps and all that stuff. And my best friend Fox, he called me and he was doing National Outdoor Leadership Association, NOLS. He was teaching people how to live in the wild and doing these crazy excursions through the mountains. And he said, hey, come to Wyoming. They have a yoga studio here. You can teach. You can start over. Everything will be great. I was like, yeah, sure. So he bought me a plane ticket and he's like, I'll pick you up in Denver. So I flew to Denver and his partner, Sean, was living in Austin. And when I got to Denver, he said, change of plans. Sean's grandma just passed away. We're going to go be with him. I said, hell yeah, let's go. If one thing that has been constant in my life has been my friends and my family. Without them, I wouldn't be right. Absolutely.
And what I hear is a deep, abiding trust. Even though you're a yoga instructor by trade, you wear many hats, so I don't want to just pigeonhole you, Jen. But that I always think of people that teach yoga as people that are very grounded and rooted because they are literally touching the ground. They are literally focusing on being in your body to be able to ascend to that higher level of consciousness and to transcend the busy mind. But then I'm also hearing this level of trust that's so high that you are able to release things and pick up and go where the wind carries you. I see you as like landing with firm feet. And then the next thing I know, you're flying here or flying there with such ease. And so what I'm wondering is with all that you've done in your life, and all of these different methodologies that you've been learning and all of these lessons that you've been learning, when it came time to receive that information that your grandfather was the abuser, how did you let go of that? Was that something that was really difficult? Was there still a gripping or?
He was on his deathbed and my big brother FaceTimed me and he showed me him and he looked like a skeleton. And you can tell he was in a place where he was catatonic, so I could see his arms moving, and it was a fear that I saw that reflected a compassion in my heart and an understanding that forgiveness and prioritizing love, loving our enemies, loving those who don't always treat us the same way, that having that love surpassed any sort of emotion. Because if someone gave you that news, of course you feel angry, you feel hurt, you get mad at your family for not telling you sooner, for not doing this. In reality, there's no right way. And understanding things are as they are will bring you so much peace and healing. And that's a big, I know we'll talk about.
That's amazing to me that you could receive that information and not attach to all of that negative energy that it regenerates, that it triggers, that it brings up. And I'm not saying, like, I'm sure you've worked through some of that too.
Definitely.
What I'm hearing is all of the things that you did through your life have really helped you to have that detachment and that bigger picture of love and compassion. And the fact that you were able to see your grandfather and extend love and compassion to him, as he's dying, and you're aware of what he did, that's a miracle in itself.
I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you saying that so much. You realize these cyclical natures when somebody's on their deathbed and you still have moments of life. You prioritize very quickly. You're able to separate what is emotion and what is as it is. And you're able to hold this emotion. That doesn't mean you can't cry, you can't experience anger, you can't experience it all and allow it to finally come out. That's essential as well, but not letting that define who you are, not letting that define your essence is. Yeah.
Let's just pause there and let that linger in the air for the listeners, because that's amazing wisdom from your inner self. Well, I would love to hear what you would consider to be, what is your concept of healing? When I say the word healing, what does that mean to you?
Healing definitely is coming to terms with things as they are, rolling out the welcome mat for healing. Rolling out the welcome mat for pain, for discomfort, for whatever state of anxiety, of that icky, ugly part of yourself, and accepting it with love. So healing, of course, it could be considered coming to a balance, coming to normalcy, a homeostasis. But the thing, I would say that that's the case, but the thing is, what is normal? What is regular? And if you think of it as maybe it's our state in the fetal, and as a fetus, some people are born with conditions, so I wouldn't even say that is the case. So in a way, healing is knowing ourselves, knowing our multiplicities, and coming to terms with a lens of love. Through a lens of love.
That's beautiful, beautifully spoken. So I'd like to see if there's anything else you would like to share with our listeners. Maybe there's someone out there that's similar to you, that has experienced some type of trauma in their lifetime, or has some sort of, condition that they're battling, and they're trying to resolve a mind or a body or a soul type of issue, and they're looking for healing. Do you have any special words of encouragement or suggestions for them?
Absolutely. Know yourself. Know yourself and love yourself inside and out. Practice positive self-talk. Positive self-talk is, they're like, oh, well, I don't have, this, I need to look like this, or no. That is where it starts, is the positive self-talk, is showing yourself love. Have a daily gratitude practice is really, really important. I am so fascinated by the cyclical nature of things that I write down what I do every single day. That sounds a little crazy, but I write down what I eat. I write down, even just a little thing. I have my calendar here.
That's part of knowing yourself, right?
Absolutely.
You really know yourself.
Yeah. And, something crazy is, it's February 23rd. So last year, February, my grandpa passed away, and then they cremated him. We buried his ashes today, last year. So again, coming full circle, knowing the cyclical nature of yourself, knowing your north node and south node. Oh my gosh. But if you forget everything and, got to the end of this podcast and you feel just like, wow, that's a lot, that's heavy. My advice to you would be, live each moment on purpose. Whether you're opening your laptop, whether you're talking to someone, wonderful podcast, is you are your own guru. And that's why I love what you're doing, Laura, and I admire you so much. And I can't wait for the amazing things, and know that you're going to do so much good in this world by teaching people that they are their own guru and they are their own person, path to healing. So my advice, can I read something? Can I read a journal entry? So sure. I journal. Journaling's also a way to know ourselves, because of the cyclical nature of things. I wrote, each one of us has the ability to know ourselves profoundly. Fine-tuning how to tap into these inner intelligences through yoga, meditation, working on our communications inwardly, in order to live a full expression of what our essence, our soul, our spirit is outwardly. Stripping down the layers and diving deeper and deeper into a wisdom that is being, or infinite existence, and learning from that place where each living and waking moment is exactly where you need to be. And learning the lessons we need to learn in order to step into a more intelligible place of functioning. That's where our ancestors live on a day-to-day basis. The intelligences that cannot be measured by modern methods of science, such as intuition, synchronicity, empathy. I write down like little synchronicities, like, oh, this happened, or today I met someone or overheard them say Jennifer, and I listen to each detail in your life, because each moment is insight of where we need to go. And what else did I say? This is where intuition, synchronicity, and empathy is where we explore our morals and values by holding compassion and loving kindness as our lens towards achieving mindfulness. By learning from all beings of all time who walked this earth and left clues how we live life, learning about gene keys, learning about human design, learning about astrology, astronomy, learning about our multiplicities, the many layers of ourselves. Learning our own elements, air, this is the letting go, is Gemini. Or how not to live life. From learning from our lessons and understanding why we were put here on this planet, knowing your life purpose. Arriving to a place where all exists in light, as vulnerable as that may be. Love is the ultimate cure to all. Love for ourselves, for our environment, for one another, for each sunrise and each sunset. Live so fully in the present that we realize that beauty exists on a more profound level of love. And that's what God is. Our essence, our divinity. And that's why we're here.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for that vulnerable share of your journal. I know those words are going out into the words of the listeners and the viewers, and is tickling that their own seed of wisdom within them. And I just want to thank you, Jen, for sharing your stories of healing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. It's been a
If you have come this far, I want to thank you so much for the gift of your attention. To hear more amazing healing stories, please subscribe. This podcast has been brought to you by the Hearts of Healing Center. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing more light, love, healing, and hope by freely offering holistic healing services to our local and global community. To learn more about us and to see more details from today's episode, be sure to check out the show notes. And don't forget, you are more than your body. You are more than your mind. You are the guru, and the guru is you.